Get this youngster away from here before he infects something. Dr. Harrison's sharp voice reverberated down the hallway of Chicago Memorial Hospital as he indicated the 10-year-old child who had just come through the front entrance. Jerome Williams halted in the center of the marble entrance hall, his worn shoes creating a striking difference against the gleaming tiles. He had journeyed 12 blocks through the harsh November storm to arrive here, but it wasn't the freezing temperature that made his hands tremble. It was the intensity of a commitment he had made to his inner voice. "Please, sir," Jerome spoke, his tone composed, catching everyone by surprise. "I simply wish to assist the young lady in the wheelchair. I understand how to help her regain her ability to walk." Dr. Harrison, chief of the pediatric neurology unit and descendant of a medical family spanning 4 generations, regarded the child as though he were a mark on his spotless white coat. "Didn't you understand my words? I summoned security. Children from the streets don't enter this place and instruct physicians on their work." At age 4 to 5, Dr. Harrison had established his standing by caring exclusively for the children of Chicago's wealthy families. His expertise lay in telling rich parents precisely what they wished to hear, even when no hope remained, particularly concerning the daughter of influential Dr. Michael Foster, head surgeon and the hospital's primary financial contributor. "This young girl has undergone physical rehabilitation for 3 years without ever taking a single step," Jerome persisted, paying no attention to the approaching security officers. "However, I can assist her. My grandmother instructed me." Dr. Foster emerged in the corridor at that precise moment, wheeling his 7-year-old daughter, Emma. The child, born with cerebral palsy, observed everything with bright, inquisitive eyes. When she spotted Jerome, something unexplainable occurred. She beamed and extended her tiny arms in his direction. "Emma, stop." Dr. Foster whispered urgently, drawing the chair away. "We need to go to your treatment." But Emma gestured toward Jerome and spoke her first clear word in 2 years, "Friend." The quiet that followed was overwhelming. Dr. Harrison experienced a surge of annoyance at the girl's response. During the 3 years he had been caring for Emma, she had never displayed interest in any person or therapeutic method. Jerome lowered himself to the wheelchair's height, his gaze connecting with Emma's. "Hello, princess. Would you like to discover how to dance?" "That's enough," Dr. Harrison burst out. "Security, escort this child out immediately. And you," he directed at Jerome, "if you appear here again, I'll contact the authorities." Jerome rose slowly, but before being led away, he whispered something that froze Dr. Harrison's blood. "Doctor, I understand precisely why Emma hasn't improved, and I know that you're aware of this too." As the security guards guided him toward the exit, Jerome maintained his stare on Dr. Harrison. Something existed in those eyes that seemed beyond a 10-year-old child's years, ancient understanding, unshakable resolve, and most disturbing, the calm assurance of someone possessing secrets too dangerous to reveal at an inappropriate moment. If you're finding this tale of bravery and perseverance engaging, remember to subscribe to the channel to discover how a simple moment of disgrace would become the spark for a transformation that would permanently alter the lives of everyone in that medical facility. 3 days had elapsed since Jerome's removal from Memorial Hospital, yet Dr. Harrison couldn't eliminate those words from his thoughts. "I understand precisely why Emma hasn't improved, and I know that you're aware of this too." What could that child have meant by such a statement? Harrison attempted to convince himself it was merely the delusions of a troubled youth, but something about the certainty in those eyes disturbed him profoundly. Thursday morning arrived, and he found Jerome seated on the main entrance steps, as though he had been waiting for someone. The boy made no effort to enter the building. He simply observed the flow of people through the glass doors with patience that contradicted his age. "Haven't you contacted the police yet?" Harrison demanded sharply from the security guard at the reception desk. "He's causing no disturbance, doctor. He merely sits there. Technically speaking, the sidewalk belongs to the public." Harrison felt a surge of frustration. This child was clearly attempting to provoke him, and the strategy was effective. During Emma's physical therapy session that morning, something unusual occurred. The girl, typically listless and disengaged, kept glancing toward the window. When Dr. Harrison followed her gaze, he spotted Jerome outside, observing through the glass. Emma began shifting restlessly in her chair, attempting to communicate through hand movements. This was the first occasion in months she had displayed any form of urgency or desire. "What's causing her behavior today?" inquired Dr. Foster, noticing the change in his daughter's demeanor. "Simply a phase," Harrison responded curtly, drawing the window curtains closed. "Perhaps we should modify her medication." However, Emma didn't become calm. Instead, she began weeping, genuine tears of frustration that Harrison hadn't witnessed in years. It appeared as though she was desperately attempting to convey something that nobody could comprehend. That afternoon, Harrison found Jerome conversing with Janet, one of the hospital's most experienced nurses, in the parking area. The scene infuriated him. "Janet, you received instructions not to engage with this child." "I apologize, Dr. Harrison, but he was describing techniques his grandmother employed with special needs children. It's truly captivating, actually." "Captivating?" Harrison nearly shouted. "He's an uneducated child living on the streets." Jerome turned calmly toward Harrison. "Doctor, my grandmother was Lily Williams. She served at this hospital for 3 decades in the pediatric neurology ward. Perhaps you recall her." Harrison's blood turned cold. He remembered Lily Williams perfectly well, one of the most respected nurses who had ever worked there, renowned for achieving remarkable results with cases deemed hopeless. She had retired 15 years prior and had recently passed away. "That's impossible," Harrison stammered. "She raised me following my parents' death," Jerome continued, his voice maintaining that unsettling composure. "She instructed me in everything regarding how children's minds function, how to connect with them when adults abandon hope. She taught me particularly about cases like Emma's." Janet glanced between the two men, sensing the tension in the atmosphere. "Dr. Harrison, if he truly is Lily's grandson." "Enough." Harrison exploded. "I don't care who he claims to be. Children do not treat patients in this hospital." Jerome stepped forward, and for the first time, Harrison observed something other than calm in those eyes. He saw a determination that made him involuntarily retreat. "Dr. Harrison, I'm aware that you're deceiving Dr. Foster about Emma's improvement. I know you understand exactly what's wrong with her, but you're concealing it because you don't want to acknowledge you misdiagnosed her 3 years ago." The world ceased around Harrison. How could this child know about the misdiagnosis he had made and concealed all these years? "You know nothing," Harrison whispered, but his voice was trembling. "I know Emma doesn't suffer from severe cerebral palsy as you informed her father," Jerome continued relentlessly. "I know she has a treatable condition that you misdiagnosed, and now you're afraid to correct it because it would destroy your reputation." Harrison felt cold perspiration trickle down his spine. That misdiagnosis had tormented his nights for years. He had been young, arrogant, too eager to impress Dr. Foster with his expertise. By the time he realized his error, it was too late. Correcting it would mean admitting incompetence and possibly facing a medical malpractice lawsuit. "How do you," Harrison began, but Jerome wasn't finished. "And I know how to help her. My grandmother taught me exactly how to treat cases like this. But you'd rather keep an innocent child suffering than admit you made a mistake." Janet watched the scene in shock. She had never seen Dr. Harrison so pale and out of control. "If you don't leave here right now, I'll call the police," Harrison threatened, but his voice no longer carried the authority it once had. Jerome smiled, a smile that didn't suit a 10-year-old boy, laden with painful wisdom and unwavering determination. "You can call them, Doctor, but every day I'll be here reminding you that there's a girl in there who could be running and playing if you had the courage to do the right thing." As Jerome calmly walked away, Harrison stood motionless, feeling his carefully constructed world begin to crumble. This boy knew too much, secrets that could destroy his career. What Dr. Harrison didn't realize yet was that Jerome wasn't there by chance. And his knowledge of Emma's case was just the tip of an iceberg that was about to emerge from the icy waters of truth, carrying with it revelations that would transform that hospital forever. Dr. Harrison was determined to end this situation once and for all. The following morning, he convened an emergency meeting with the entire pediatric neurology team. "Colleagues, we have a sensitive situation," he announced, adjusting his spectacles and assuming his most authoritative stance. "An unaccompanied child has been disrupting our operations and even attempting to interfere with patient care. We need to take action." Dr. Rebecca Chen, a neurologist who had recently arrived from Boston, frowned. "What type of interference?" "The boy claims to possess medical knowledge inherited from an alleged grandmother who worked here. It's clearly a case of childhood fantasy, but it's causing disruptions." Janet, the nurse who had spoken with Jerome, cleared her throat uncomfortably. "Dr. Harrison, I verified the records. Lily Williams did indeed work here for 30 years, and she had a grandson who was recently orphaned." The silence in the room was uncomfortable. Harrison felt perspiration beginning to form on his forehead. "That doesn't change the fact that a child cannot." "Excuse me," Dr. Chen interrupted. "May I ask what kind of knowledge this boy has demonstrated?" Harrison hesitated. He couldn't admit that Jerome had identified his misdiagnosis without completely exposing himself. Unscientific techniques, baseless theories. "I'd like to speak with him," Dr. Chen said decisively. "If he really is Lily Williams' grandson, that changes everything. She was a legend here." That afternoon, Jerome was at his usual spot on the steps when Dr. Chen approached him. Unlike Harrison, she sat down beside him, treating him as an equal. "You must be Jerome. I'm Dr. Chen. I've heard about your grandmother." Jerome studied her carefully. "Did you work with her?" "Not directly, but everyone knew her reputation. She saved many children that other doctors had given up on. She taught me that sometimes doctors get so caught up in their textbooks that they forget to look at the actual child," Jerome replied, his maturity again surprising an adult. Dr. Chen smiled. "Your grandmother was wise. Tell me about Emma Foster." Jerome looked her straight in the eye. "Do you really want to know, or are you testing me to see if I know anything?" The directness of the question caught Dr. Chen off guard. "I really want to know. Emma doesn't have severe cerebral palsy as her chart indicates. She has neuromotor disconnection syndrome that can be treated with specific stimulation. My grandmother taught me to recognize the signs." Dr. Chen felt a chill. If Jerome was correct, it meant that Emma had spent 3 years receiving inadequate treatment. "How can you be so certain?" "Because I saw the same symptoms in my cousin before my grandmother helped her. And because I've been watching Emma for weeks through that window, she responds to stimuli that a child with severe cerebral palsy wouldn't respond to." At that moment, Dr. Harrison appeared at the hospital entrance and saw the two talking. His expression turned to pure fury. "Dr. Chen, what are you doing?" "Speaking with a very perceptive young man," she replied, standing up. "Jerome, I'd like you to meet Dr. Foster. I think he should hear your observations about Emma." Harrison's blood ran cold. If Jerome spoke to Dr. Foster about the misdiagnosis, his career would be over. "This is absolutely unacceptable." Harrison exploded. "Dr. Chen, you are allowing a street kid to question our medical protocols. A child who demonstrates exceptional medical knowledge inherited from one of the best professionals this hospital has ever had," Dr. Chen replied firmly. Jerome stood up slowly, watching the dynamic between the two doctors. There was something in Harrison's tension that confirmed his suspicions. "Dr. Harrison," Jerome said with that disturbing calm, "you're afraid of what I'm going to tell Dr. Foster, aren't you?" "I'm not afraid of anything a child can say." "Then why don't you let me show him what I know about Emma? If I'm wrong, you can kick me out of here for good." Dr. Chen looked between Jerome and Harrison, sensing a tension that went far beyond a simple disagreement over protocol. "Harrison, what's the problem? If the boy is wrong, it will only confirm our methods." Harrison was cornered. Refusing now would raise suspicion, but agreeing could expose his devastating mistake. "All right," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "But when this charade is exposed, I want action taken." Jerome smiled, a smile that didn't belong on a 10-year-old boy. "Perfect, Dr. Harrison. I think you're going to be very surprised by what we discover." As they walked toward the hospital, Dr. Chen whispered to Jerome, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" "My grandmother always said that the truth has a way of finding out," Jerome replied. "And that when someone tries to hide it for too long, it finds a way out." What Dr. Harrison didn't know was that Jerome had spent the last 2 weeks doing much more than just watching Emma through the window. He had talked to longtime nurses, discreetly reviewed progress reports, and most importantly, he had carefully noted every inconsistency in the girl's treatment. His notebook, tucked away in a worn backpack, contained information that would not only prove his diagnosis correct but also reveal the extent of the deception Harrison had perpetuated for years. As they entered the hospital, Jerome touched the backpack lightly. His grandmother had taught him that justice sometimes required patience. But when the time was right, it was relentless, like a storm finally finding its strength. It was as everyone was heading toward Emma's room that Jerome noticed something that made him smile inwardly. Dr. Harrison was sweating obsessively, checking his watch and making that nervous gesture of adjusting his glasses that his grandmother had taught him to recognize in doctors when they knew they were about to be exposed. The truth was coming, and Harrison still had no idea of the hurricane that was about to devastate his carefully constructed world of lies and false prestige. When they entered the physical therapy room where Emma was waiting, Jerome discreetly took his tattered notebook out of his backpack. Dr. Harrison had no idea that those handwritten pages contained 3 weeks of meticulous observations that were about to destroy a 15-year career built on lies. "Dr. Foster," Jerome said, approaching the wheelchair where Emma smiled when she saw him, Can I show you something about your daughter? Dr. Foster, a serious man who had dedicated the last years of his life to trying to cure his daughter, nodded. Of course, but be quick. Jerome knelt down to Emma's height and began a series of simple exercises, lightly touching different points on her legs and feet. To everyone's shock, Emma reacted immediately, moving her fingers and even trying to bend her knees. That's impossible, muttered Dr. Harrison, sweat beginning to form on his forehead. Emma has severe cerebral palsy. These reactions are just involuntary spasms. Dr. Harrison, Jerome said, turning with that disturbing calm, Emma does not have severe cerebral palsy. She has neuromotor disconnection syndrome, a completely different and treatable condition. Dr. Chen watched Emma's reactions with fascination. Jerome, how can you be so sure? Jerome opened his notebook and began to read. November 1st, Emma responded to tactile stimuli on her lower extremities. Day 5, demonstrated conscious control of facial muscles when encouraged. Day 10, attempted to vocalize specific words when properly stimulated. Dr. Foster turned pale. You've been observing my daughter without my permission? From the public sidewalk, sir, and what I saw were clear signs that her diagnosis has been wrong for 3 years. Dr. Harrison felt the world collapse around him. That's absurd. A 10-year-old child questioning a certified medical diagnosis. Jerome stood up and looked directly at Harrison. Dr. Harrison, do you want me to tell Dr. Foster about the MRI scans that were misinterpreted in 2020? Or how you hid the results of neurological tests that contradicted your initial diagnosis? The silence in the room was deafening. Dr. Foster slowly turned to Harrison. What is he talking about? Harrison was visibly shaking now. Michael, don't listen to this kid. He's making this up. My grandmother kept copies of all the important tests, Jerome continued relentlessly. She was working on the file when Emma's results came in. She showed me how to identify the signs you chose to ignore. Jerome turned the page of his notebook and read, MRI report, March 15, 2020, fundamentally normal brain structures. Signs consistent with mild to moderate neuromotor disconnection syndrome. Prognosis favorable with appropriate stimulation. Dr. Foster snatched the notebook from Jerome's hands. His eyes scanned the meticulous notes, each observation dated and detailed. Harrison, is this true? Dr. Harrison was cornered, and he knew it. Michael, at the time there was uncertainty in the diagnosis. Uncertainty? Dr. Foster exploded. You told me my daughter would never walk, that I should accept she would be dependent forever. I was being cautious. Cautious. Dr. Chen grabbed the notebook and examined the notes. Jerome, these observations are extraordinarily accurate. You documented neurological response patterns that clearly indicate preserved motor function. Jerome approached Emma again. Princess, do you want to try standing up? With his help, Emma was able to support her weight on her legs for a few seconds. It wasn't the steady steps that would come with proper treatment, but it was conscious, controlled movement. Dr. Foster had tears in his eyes. 3 years, Harrison. 3 years of my daughter's life that could have been different. Michael, please let me explain. Explain? Dr. Foster was clearly furious now. You lied to me. You lied to Emma. You stole years of her development for what? False pride? For fear of admitting a mistake. Jerome closed his notebook calmly. Dr. Foster, with the right treatment, Emma can live a completely normal life. Maybe with some limitations, but she can walk, run, play like any other child. Dr. Chen was visibly moved. Jerome, will you help me develop a proper treatment plan for Emma? It would be an honor, Doctor. Dr. Harrison made one last desperate attempt. You can't take a child who lives on the street seriously. Where are his credentials? His medical training? Jerome turned to him one last time. Dr. Harrison, my grandmother always said that true knowledge doesn't come from diplomas on the wall, but from genuine love for patients, something you clearly forgot. Dr. Foster held Emma in his lap, watching her respond positively to Jerome's stimuli. Harrison, you're fired. And you can be sure that the medical board will hear exactly what happened here. Harrison staggered out of the room, his career destroyed not by a rival doctor or a formal investigation, but by a 10-year-old boy who cared more about a child than he had ever cared about his own reputation. While Jerome worked patiently with Emma, showing Dr. Chen the techniques his grandmother had taught him, a new reality began to take shape in that hospital, a reality where true medicine was practiced not by those with the most degrees, but by those with the most heart. What no one knew yet was that Jerome held one last secret about his grandmother, a secret that would transform not only Emma's life but the future of hundreds of children who would come to that hospital in search of hope. 6 months after that transformative day, Chicago Memorial Hospital was a completely different place. Jerome Williams, now officially adopted by the Foster family, had become the youngest consultant in the institution's history, working side by side with Dr. Chen in the newly created Department of Innovative Pediatric Neurorehabilitation. Emma ran through the hospital corridors, her steady footsteps echoing where once there had been only the silence of wheelchair wheels. At 8 years old, she not only walked, she danced, jumped, and played like any other child. More importantly, she had become an ambassador for a program that had already helped dozens of children with similar misdiagnoses. Jerome! Jerome! Emma shouted, running toward her adoptive brother who was examining medical records in the new room named the Lily Williams Center for Neurorehabilitation. Dr. Chen said we're helping 3 more children today. Jerome smiled, watching the girl who had been the catalyst for a medical revolution. Princess, are you ready to show them that miracles do happen when there is true love? Dr. Foster watched the scene from the hallway, still moved by the sight of his daughter running. The guilt over the lost years had been replaced by deep gratitude and a renewed purpose. He had used his influence to ensure that Jerome's program received full funding and national recognition. As for Dr. Harrison, his fall had been as spectacular as his arrogance. Fired for medical negligence, he lost his license after an investigation revealed other suspicious cases. Today, he worked as a medical equipment salesman, a bitter irony for someone who once considered himself untouchable. Jerome, said Dr. Chen, approaching with a folder, 5 more cases have come in of children that other doctors said would never walk. Their parents traveled from other states after hearing about our work. Jerome took the folder, his eyes shining with the same determination he had shown on that first day. We're going to help all of them, Doctor. It was then that Dr. Chen revealed something she had discovered in Lily Williams' personal files. Jerome, did you know that your grandmother left behind a journal with techniques she developed over 30 years? Techniques that were never officially documented because she knew the traditional medical community wouldn't be ready to accept unconventional methods. Jerome was silent for a moment. She always said that true knowledge was something that was passed from heart to heart, not from book to book. This journal, Dr. Chen continued, contains observations on over 200 cases of children she secretly helped over the years, cases the doctors had given up on. But she healed using love, patience, and techniques she learned by observing the children themselves. Dr. Foster joined the conversation. Jerome, your grandmother didn't just save Emma. She left a legacy that will save thousands of children. At that moment, Emma ran up to Jerome and hugged him. Thank you for teaching me how to walk, brother. Jerome hugged her back, whispering, thank you for teaching me that sometimes the greatest miracles come disguised as children the world gave up on too soon. Today, 3 years later, the Lily Williams Center is a national leader in pediatric neurorehabilitation. Jerome, now 13, is studying medicine in a special program for gifted students, but he never stops working with the children who come to the center. Dr. Harrison continues to fight to rebuild his career, but he has discovered that reputations destroyed by arrogance and prejudice are much harder to repair than medical diagnoses. He lost not only his job but the trust of an entire community that discovered how it had underestimated the power of truth in the hands of a determined child. Emma Foster, now 11, is studying to become a pediatrician. She wants to give back to all the children who were once considered lost causes, just like she was. Jerome learned that the greatest revenge against prejudice is not anger or resentment, but the quiet success that transforms lives and proves that greatness has no color, social class, or age. He turned the humiliation he suffered on his first day into fuel for a revolution that changed the lives of hundreds of families. The plaque at the entrance to the Lily Williams Center bears a phrase that Jerome chose himself. Here, we believe that every miracle begins when someone refuses to give up on a child. Dr. Chen always says to anyone who will listen, Jerome taught us that true medicine doesn't come from diplomas hanging on the wall, but from a heart that refuses to accept that anyone is a lost cause. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who thought they knew everything about your abilities? Have you ever turned humiliation into motivation to prove your worth? Share your story of overcoming adversity in the comments. If this story of courage and determination touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that true strength knows no age, color, or social background, and that sometimes the greatest teachers come in the smallest packages.